What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a weird but wonderful entitled parent story to show you. Entitled dad and his daughter went into our garden to steal tomatoes. I was still in elementary school when this happened, so my memory could be fuzzy. There was a house to the left that was being rented out by the grandson of the builder and designer of the home. A family that lived all the way across the state moved in. I assumed that they wanted to get away from the big city and settle down in a small town. They had a 3-year-old daughter that we will call Gia. They allowed my sister and I to play with the little girl. The first day we had a blast and I was looking forward to playing with her again. The second time she came over, she wanted to hold my old English bantam. I let her explore the chicken coop and I let her pet and hold them. My mum caught us and I got in trouble. All she wanted to do was pick up the chicken, and when she would drop it or if it would somehow escape, she would chase it down. I was trying to distract her from the chicken. It worked because she found another distraction. She broke at least 3 flower pots. My mum was supervising the whole time and she did not like that she did that. She sent her home and that was the last time she was invited over. Despite what she did, we were not going to hold it against the neighbours. We didn't know it at the time, but it was a red flag. My mum had always wanted a garden. Ever since I can remember, she had a garden with every single vegetable you could think of. I loved being in the garden and playing near the garden as a kid. One day, when my mum was outside picking tomatoes, she noticed that the tomatoes were missing. Now, a bit later on, my mum was having a cup of coffee and she caught the dad and his daughter sneaking into the garden with a bucket. When she confronted him about it, he tried to claim that he just wanted to show his daughter the garden. I don't know where you're from, but where I'm from, parents don't go into people's gardens multiple times a week with their kids. I guess he was trying to claim he was teaching his daughter about plants. The only thing he taught her was how to steal. After about a year and a half, they decided to make their own garden and place it right next to the fence in an area where we could always see it. Every time they would run into each other, he would try to boast about how well their garden is doing, what they're planting, etc. One day, he threatened to call animal control on my dogs because they bark 24/7. There is a wooded area behind our house. The dogs are responsible for protecting the chickens from raccoons, possums, foxes, and gosh knows what else could be in there. The next day, my mum was probably giving the dogs water. He was tending the garden and he turned to my mum and said, "This is where our zucchini plants are gonna go." After a year and a half, their garden failed miserably. At this point, they had 3 kids. He started taking all 3 of his kids to steal more tomatoes. My mum would confront him again and again, but he would blame his children. He and his wife were horrible parents. As soon as the kids could walk, they were allowed to run around the neighborhood naked, climb the neighbors' trees, and scream bloody murder. When she had her 4th child, she would let it sit outside in a high chair for hours in the heat while she sat inside doing gosh knows what. Things only got worse. They would end up stealing other vegetables until eventually my mum lost faith in her garden. Within 3 years, it went from being a diverse vegetable utopia to a patch of weeds taller than me. For whatever reason, my mum would not call the police or CPS or do anything. She was never the type of person to stand up for herself, and when she does, she would feel guilty about it. The other neighbours have threatened to call CPS, but they never did. They eventually got evicted and they were forced to pay thousands of dollars worth of damages. What happened to the house is a story in of itself. Let's just say the damages were so bad you would think their house was ransacked. Oh, poor mum. I hope she got that faith back and grew another garden. It sounds like something that she really loved, and it's a real shame to see those entitled people take it away from her. But then again, karma hit those buttholes good and it serves them right. God knows where those kids are right now. They're probably in jail or doing some other stuff. It doesn't sound like they were good people. I mean, this was not just an entitled parent story, this was an entitled family story. I know it is mainly the parents' fault because they're not good parents, but still, the kids are so horrible. This is probably one of the worst entitled families I've ever come across on this subreddit. Now for our second story. Entitled parent tries to take disabled driver's parking space, gets publicly embarrassed for her troubles. Okay, so this story happened something like 20 years ago, so my memory of the exact details are somewhat hazy. My mother has multiple sclerosis, MS, and over the almost 30 years since she was diagnosed, it has taken her ability to walk. Today, she needs a wheelchair just to get around the house, and sometimes has trouble transferring from the wheelchair to her armchair or bed. But this event took place back when she could still get by with a wheeled walking frame over short distances, and only needed a wheelchair if it involved extended distances, such as, for instance, doing the weekly shop at the local supermarket. I can't remember exactly how old I was when this happened, but it must have been before I got my driving license, as I was sitting in the passenger seat when this happened. I was going shopping with my mum so I could push the trolley and do any heavy lifting while she got around in her wheelchair. We arrived at the supermarket and only the very last disabled parking bay was free. Not a problem, as we only needed one. The car park was very clearly laid out and marked as being one way, meaning that you were expected to go the long way round if you missed a bay, which is why we were surprised when we encountered a car coming the other way trying to get into the same parking space. Cue classic 2 cars 1 space scene. We've all been there. Windows are rolled down so my mother and the other driver can discuss what's happening. I will be paraphrasing due to not remembering the exact wording. It was an entitled parent who said, "That's my space." My mum said, "You came the wrong way." "I know, but I need that space for my daughter." I look over and there's a baby seat in the back of the other car. "Is your daughter disabled?" "No." "Then you need to use the parent and child bays." The supermarket had more parent and child bays than it did disabled bays. They were just a little further from the doors. "Those are too far to walk with my child." "Well, at least you can walk." This line I remember perfectly. Now, my mother has never been one to use her disability as an excuse. Even today, she tries to do as much as she possibly can for herself, but she is not one to stand by and let people sideline or take advantage of her because of it. The entitled parent turns a truly wonderful shade of green, my mother's words having cut through her defense and scored a critical hit. She backs up and makes her way over to the parent and child bays, allowing us to park in peace. While we were in the supermarket, I happened to catch a glimpse of the entitled parent as she pushed her daughter around in a trolley. She saw my mum in her wheelchair and did a quick 180 and walked off, appropriately ashamed of her previous actions. I like to think that maybe we stopped her from turning into a full Karen that day. Well, you know what? I think that story has a good ending. Maybe that Karen has lived an entitled life her whole life, and it was this event right here that actually made her think about how she was acting. OP, you could be right. Perhaps she was like, "Oh, you know what? I was seriously wrong in this instance. How about I don't do this again?" Overall, if she changed her outlook on life and stopped being so rude after this event, I can see it as wholly positive. So well done to you guys and well done to your mum. Oh, and also the line, "At least you can walk," yeah, that was pure gold. Fair play. Now for our final story, the last piece of chocolate cake. In the mid-90s, my sister and I had taken our kids to a fundraiser at their grade school. There were game and craft booths in the gym, and in the cafeteria they were selling cake and ice cream. Homemade cake slices on little paper plates. This was only $1 and awesome. I was ahead of my sister and managed to grab the last piece of chocolate cake they had. Now, both my sister and I think that if you're going to go to the trouble of making cake, then it had to be chocolate. Other kinds of cake are okay, but chocolate is the ultimate. We even had a rating system for cake. 1 through 10, with 10 being the best. My sister wasn't all that happy that there was no more chocolate cake, but I got there first, so nya. Because of this, she didn't bother getting cake for herself. We found a place to sit down and I put my precious cake on the table in front of me. Almost immediately, this strange lady reached for my cake. She had to have been following me closely. I quickly moved it to the left of me, out of her reach, and gave her a "What the heck, lady?" look. The lady said, "My son wants this. There's no more chocolate ones up there." She actually stepped over to where she could reach for it again, and I slid the cake over to my right, in front of my sister, again out of the lady's reach. I said, "No, this is mine. I paid for it. Go and get your own." This lady then got angry. "My son doesn't like the other kinds there." She pointed to a kid that looked to be about 4 or 5 that was sniffling sadly behind her. "Just give it to me." Once again, she reached for it and my sister picked it up and held it away from her. Then my sister asked, "This cake here? You want this piece of cake right here?" The angry lady then said, "Yes, don't be stupid. My son wants it. You can get another piece. Now hand it to me." For a moment, I thought my sister was going to throw the cake at the angry lady, or pick it up and just put the plateless cake in the lady's hand. But what happened next was worse. My sister licked the top of the cake a couple of times. The angry lady stared at her in shocked disbelief for a few seconds, then began shouting insults. She called my sister childish and immature, while the kids standing behind the woman began to wail and sob loudly. Then the lady stomped off into the crowd, dragging her crying son with her. My sister then turned to face me, smiled and held out the cake to me. I silently stared at her with one eyebrow raised and made no move to take it. "Oh, you don't want it now either?" she asked sweetly. I remained staring at her and didn't reply. She grinned and said, "Cool, I'll take it." She then proceeded to happily eat my chocolate cake, making a point to tell me how good it was. She said, "I think this one just might be a 9. fine, but that might be the victory flavoring it. Sometimes you just can't win. Oh, I love this story. Alright, so forget all the entitled parent stuff in this story. Your sister is an evil genius. I love her. Like, how intelligent is that? She licked the cake to stop the entitled parent wanting it, but also to stop you wanting it, so she just got it herself. Fair play. You know what? All I've got to do is just give her a round of applause for that. That is incredible. Fair play to your sister. On the whole, as long as the entitled parent did not get what they want, it's always a win. Perhaps a bigger win for the sister in this case, though. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of Entitled Parents. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Wow, that sister is an evil genius. If you want more Entitled Parent stories, check the video out on screen. It's an absolute cracker. Trust me, you're going to want to watch it.